Welcome to Speed Talk Live, which isn't really live, but a poorly produced podcast where we talk about NASCAR and all things racing. And occasionally we have a special guest or two, when we can get them to show up. Sit down, strap in, pull those belts tight. Speed Talk Live is on the air.
Pace car is in. Green flag, green flag, green flag.
Welcome everybody, and as Matthew McConaughey so eloquently put it, all right. Speed Talk Live, we're back for another week, coming out of Vegas, or as we call it, Las Logano, as he won the opening round there in Vegas. We're going to talk about that. We talked to Chase Elliott. We also got some other news on a win from the middle of the week, and we're going to talk about passing in the grass and whether we should have grass or not. I'm Greg Engel, editor-in-chief, cupscene.com. Don't take that too lightly, because I've had the title since 1996. Joining me, my favorite law student from England, Owen Johnson. How are you, my friend?
Doing great. How are you?
Good. Here we are, back again. Man, the season's long, but we've only got 3 more races. We had 4 races, but Logano, as we talked about, won Las Vegas this weekend, it was a great win. Good to see him. 2 of his last 5 titles have come after he's won the opening round. Can he keep it up and go all the way? Well, that story is yet to be written. What are your thoughts, Owen?
Well, I think there's definitely a pattern, but there's also another pattern that we noticed. I think we pointed out a couple shows ago. Every even year since 2014, Logano has made the championship 4. He was nearly that streak was nearly ruined when he got out at Coda, but Bowman disqualification put him back in, got lucky, got the chance to go for it again at Vegas, and kept the streak alive, and obviously has another chance to go for a championship.
Now, look, everybody's been talking about the even years in Logano. Some people have been pointing to higher powers and mystical junk and blah, blah, blah. Look, I don't believe in horoscopes, and I don't believe in it just happens to be coincidence. Would it be a great story if Logano wins another title and wins a 3rd title? Sure, it'd be a great story, but it'd also be a great story if Blaney won back-to-back. It would be a great story if Christopher Bell won. It'd be a great story. So there's a lot of great stories there. Here's my feeling about this. Some people can say that Logano's getting hot at the right time, but if you look at the rest of the season, it was kind of mediocre. And he did get lucky getting put back in with the DQ. So we'll see. I'm a little hesitant to pick him as my very favorite to go all the way, simply because he's not exactly had a great season. He's had some struggles, and all it's going to take in these last 3 races is one struggle race, like he's had plenty of examples this year. One struggle race, and it's all over for Logano. Do you agree, or do you think he could go all the way, Owen?
I do agree with you that he's had a really up and down season. Obviously, some wins in the playoffs, but especially the beginning of the season when the Fords as a whole struggled. Logano was one of the primary candidates for struggling. But the big thing I think is, like you said, it was Blaney who won the championship last year. It was Logano the year before. There has not been a team outside Penske that has won in the next-gen era a championship in NASCAR. So whatever it comes down to, those Penske drivers and teams know how to set up a car for Phoenix, and they know how to be fast at that track. And our championship structure, that's all that matters. So I would never count out Logano or Blaney if he makes it at Phoenix.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but I think there are so many factors than just simply saying they've got the next-gen car figured out. They got to have good pit stops. They've got to not get caught up in something else, that's not of their own making. So there are a lot of variables, but I totally agree with you. I think Penske has really got it together when it comes to the next-gen car, especially when we get to the end of the season, because really, besides race wins, the only thing that matters in a NASCAR Cup season is actually winning that title. So, yeah, we'll see. I kind of like Christopher Bell. I think he's kind of the underrated guy who's come up short. He had the trouble last year in Phoenix, or he could have been a contender for the championship. He did do something odd this weekend. He won the pole, which is not unusual. He's won a lot of poles this year. But he put his crew chief, Adam Stevens, did not pick the first pit stall. And that was the first time that's happened all season. So did his pit stall affect the location? Location, did it affect the outcome? I mean, like we said, it was the first time that a crew chief did not choose the number one pit stall. But Adam Stevens said he didn't think the number one pit stall held a significant advantage over the rest of the pit stalls because the pit exit camera is pretty far away from pit one stall. There's places where it's really close, like you're barely moving when you trip to the camera, and this is one that's not that way. The advantage is already inherently similar here, and I just think that the box leaves a little bit to be desired. Now, the last stops, the ones that turned around and ended up winning the race for Logano, were under green, so in the end, it really didn't matter where he was at on pit road. But do you think crew chiefs will look at this going forward, especially these last three races, and not necessarily jump on that number one stall?
Well, the issue they pointed out was that the stall was slippery, so it was a little bit harder to get a takeoff from the box. And that, I mean, since it was only Bell who pitted, Logano stayed out in that last cycle. It was only Bell who came down. A slower stop could have made a little bit of a difference in just being able to get to Logano. And I don't think it really did here, but the motivation was really just trying to make sure they picked a box that was easy enough to accelerate out of. And the box they picked, box 6, was the one the last two Vegas winners, who both started in second, actually chose and won out of. If anyone's keeping track, Logano picked stall 41, which was the last one on pit lane. But again, it didn't really come down to pit stops this race.
No, it didn't. It didn't. And I didn't mean to mislead because he actually stretched his fuel mileage. But I mean, in essence, it did come down to green flag stops, because if the last ones would have been under caution and Logano would have beat him out, then yeah, we could make that argument. But I think it's mute. It's a moot point because of the fact that the last round of pit stops, wherever Logano stopped and whenever Bell stopped, they were green. So it didn't matter. One thing that did matter, though, is we had another car flip. That was Tyler Reddick going across, coming down the front stretch. I thought he made a valiant effort after he flipped to try to drive the car back to the pit stall. Now, look, it would have been fantastic if he would have pulled an old Dale Earnhardt Sr. trick and flipped his car like Earnhardt did a couple years ago at Talladega many years ago and got back in the car. And I thought maybe that was going to happen. Let me turn my light down here for the glove up. God, I'm ugly enough without all the light on me. Anyway, so when he drove back, I was kind of hoping he could continue. He wouldn't have had a chance to win the race, but it would have been a good story if he would have continued. He wasn't able to. But something that should be the story was the fact that when he was sliding across the infield in the tri-oval there at Vegas, he hit grass and then hit pavement. Now, the arguments have been all along, should we have grass in infields, in NASCAR, anywhere on a track? And I know you studied this extensively, and you actually wrote a report about it on Cup Scene a couple months ago about this very issue.
Well, yeah, you said it. He came down the track in the middle of some three-wide racing gone wrong, slid down into the infield, pretty standard, and the car took flight. Got on the barrier between the grass and the Legends Oval that comes off of pit road. The car dug in, lifted up, and started rolling over. So it's not the same as some of the rollovers we've seen over some of the past couple of races. For instance, at Daytona, when Josh Berry's car riding on the pavement lifted up and went over. In this case, the car was actually lifted up by the grass and went over. And it's something that there's precedent for this. Buescher went over at Charlotte a few years ago when his car dug into some hole in the grass. But I don't think it should be happening. Charlotte, in response to this, took away all their grass and replaced it with artificial turf to stop the cars digging in, making it as smooth as possible and not as affected by weather and things like that. And I understand it's expensive for the tracks to do this. But if we're serious about cars flipping and drivers we've talked to earlier this season in response to the blowover flips, they are serious, then I think it's a necessary expense. And we talk about SMI tracks last week, the two different types of tracks in NASCAR. Charlotte is an SMI track as well. It's not a NASCAR facility issue. These tracks are willing to spend money, and I think it's something that really does need to happen. It's happened at other tracks too besides Charlotte. Like you said, I profiled this a few months ago, talking to Frank Keller, the track president at Daytona International Speedway. That's a track that is very famous for its grass along the backstretch, but they decided to take all of that away, even the grass around the famous IMSA bus stop turns, because largely in response to Ryan Preece's flip, where he dug into the grass and flipped almost a dozen times. Really scary wreck, showed a lot of bruising in the next couple of weeks. It just seems such an avoidable situation to me. To be able to get rid of this grass, replace it. Yes, it's an expensive solution in the short term, but nothing in the safety development of these cars comes cheap. There's plenty of money spent to keep the cars on the ground for the blowover wrecks, for instance, in the R&D for that. I don't understand exactly what the resistance is to get rid of the grass at some of these other facilities.
Yeah, and as much money as they want to spend on fan amenities, which is good, that's good to have. I think some of that money should be allocated to that. I'm all for the AstroTurf that can mimic pavement a lot better than natural grass, especially after a rain. A funny story: after the first year that they took all that grass out, I was riding around the pace car with Brett Bodine, and they were seriously considering using that backstretch as a track in and of itself, and maybe running some Legends races or some modified races back there. And we came out at turn 2 doing about 140 miles an hour, and he was telling me this. And he said, we would actually, now that we don't have the grass here, we could actually put it right here. And he dove into what would have been the turn 2 on that, on this little track. And they'd already painted it out a little bit. But holy God, flying around that, what would have been the little short track, less than a half mile that they would have used for modifieds and or Legends cars, certainly scared the poop out of me, because it was quite a ride. So that didn't happen, and who knows, maybe in the future, but it does give them an opportunity to try something like that in the future. But I do think that with all, we talk about with the safety and everything, fan amenities are important, but let's take some of that money, boys and girls, and the stands are getting full all the time. We need to take some of that money that we're making from the ticket sales and the new TV revenue. Let's look at putting AstroTurf. And, we could talk about being an SMI track, but, NASCAR makes the rules. NASCAR could technically just put the rule in that, we're going to have AstroTurf everywhere. And let's see how that happens. So that's something we need to address, obviously, in the matter of safety. I remember when Boucher, I was there, Charlotte, when he dug in and did that horrible flip. And that was a lot scarier than what happened with Reddick this past Sunday. But, anytime we can eliminate the possibilities of something happening, we need to do that, and I would like to think that we will at some point. Look, another guy that crashed out, Chase Elliott. It was through no fault of his own, right? I mean, he was running inside the top 5. He looked good all weekend. He crashed out early, caught up in somebody else's. He was caught up in somebody else's wreck. We got a chance to talk to him earlier today. And after he crashed out early, and what was his mindset after crashing out?
Yeah, when we crashed, our day was over. It was that simple. And I knew that what little bit of contact we had, like by the time I got stopped or got rolling the right direction again, it was done. It wasn't like we were going to have a shot to win at that point. So yeah, it was over with, and really was just while we rode around there, you're hoping to get any little point you can, and that was kind of the goal in fixing our car and getting back out there. But honestly, I was just thinking about Homestead and thinking about what I needed next week, because I knew it was over. So yeah, just nothing really changes. Like I said to the last question, that was our thought process going into Vegas, and it certainly didn't work out for us, but I'm not looking at Homestead any different because of what happened at Vegas. I think we just have to be aggressive and keep the hammer down, and try to win and get through that way, because odds of us pointing through, especially now, are slim to none, and the odds of us pointing through before were slim too. So that's okay. This is a tough round, and I think you're much better off to win, this round to get through than you are to kind of, limp your way across the finish line with points. We've done it both ways, and I promise that winning your way in is a much better way.
So he's at the bottom of the standings. And now he comes out of there. How does he keep himself and his team motivated?
Well, I think fortunately for us, we were performing at a high level throughout the event, and to me that's the best motivating factor is when you have good performance and you have good pace and you're in contention. And I thought we were doing all those things. We were fast. We had gotten ourselves up inside the top five. Our execution on pit road was really good. So that to me makes it much easier when you're having a good day and something doesn't work out, as opposed to really struggling throughout the day and either having something go bad or just kind of limping your way across the finish line, with a mediocre finish too. So I think for us, we've just got to keep working in the direction that we were working this past weekend. I thought we had a good thing going, and hope that it translates in Homestead. But like I said, I think it's easy to stay motivated when you have good pace and you feel like you are doing the right thing. So and I feel that was what we had going on. So we'll try to carry that forward this weekend.
And also on speaking of clinching, because now Logano's clinched his way into the Final Four, AJ Allmendinger in his last full-time Xfinity season will have a chance to go for the championship. He clinched his spot on Saturday, which was a great race, and he was happy. It was Matt Collick's birthday, and there was a lot of great emotions around there. So all in all, good weekend in Vegas, and now we can look forward to Homestead, which I'm looking forward to going to. I used to live down there, and it's stone crab season. So my trip Friday night will be to Garcia's Fish House on the river in Miami for my yearly injection of stone crabs because it's the season. But we'll talk about Homestead here in a second. William Sawalich is moving up to JGR Xfinity next season. This guy's been a phenom. He just turned 18, had his first NASCAR pole position at the truck race at COTA, but he's been winning in everything. And to me, I hope he does well. It's a great story. He's a great kid, great talent. But I think once he gets on the big stage next year, and I wrote about this for Forbes, you can go check it out over there, it's really going to be time for him to put up or shut up. I really hope he does well. It's going to be his best chance to step up to the plate and in the best equipment. But we'll see how young William Sawalich does next year in Xfinity. Do you have any thoughts on that, Owen?
Well, I remember the first time I saw him race, I think maybe his third Truck Series start at Richmond, still 16 years old at that point. Now that would have been over a year ago. And I really do rate him very highly. I think he showed a lot of speed running up front at Richmond in one of his first Truck Series starts, had a good finish, I think a top 10 finish to that race. And he's kind of the whole package because he also brings sponsorship. He brings a lot of funding from his dad's company to back the equipment he's running. And so I think there's a lot of promise. If he can get good results in Xfinity, he has a very promising future.
Yeah, it's his grandfather's company, and that's who he's named after his grandfather. And he's very close to his grandfather. So, hey, good for them. But again, it's going to be time. Hopefully he's not going to crash and burn in the figurative sense, not the literal sense. So we'll see. I hope he does well. Another Midwesterner. We haven't had that in a long time. So, hey, good luck to him. Speaking of bringing stuff back, which we're not speaking of, but Dale Jr. and Budweiser are bringing back the King of Beers scheme. And if you were a Dale Jr. fan in the early 2000s, you know this paint scheme well. He's bringing it back for the late model series, going to debut at Hickory next month. Really cool deal. And I'm not big into, if nobody's going to pay me, I'm not going to sit here and tout a lot of sponsors. But it was a really great marketing feat. Dale Jr. and Tony Eury Jr., who used to be his crew chief at DEI, teased it the night before on their channels. Come to find out, Dale Jr. has purchased the trademark rights that were owned by Teresa Earnhardt to the stylized number 8. So now he has that. So they're going to run it next year. I think it's really, really cool. It's good to see. I love nostalgia. Now let's bring DuPont back and Lowe's and all the other ones. But this was a great marketing gag, great marketing program. I shouldn't say gag because it is really cool. They got a lot of merch to go with it. But my biggest question is, back in 2002 and 2003, Dale Earnhardt Jr., who was young and single at that point, had a wild hairstyle with frosted tips. I wonder if he's going to bring those back, or if Amy, his current wife, is going to let it. We'll see. But we'll see. I don't know. Frankie Muniz is stepping up to trucks full time next season. Some people are disparaging that because he's nothing more than a Hollywood actor, but I really think he's got a great story to tell, and I think he's got a great passion for this, and he's really going to try hard. So I wish him the best of luck. And I know you've talked to Frankie before, haven't you?
Spoke to him briefly. He's been running in ARCA. He's been having some success, maybe not all the results he's been hoping for, but I think he's shown some growth in ARCA. And I mean, I think it can't hurt the series to have a recognizable name running the truck series. Whatever happens, it'll be an interesting story to follow, see if he can continue his development or what happens. Probably slightly lower expectations than William Sawalich and some of the other drivers, but definitely an interesting name to keep in mind, see on the scoring pylon.
Yeah, he's got the motivation. I mean, I've seen the drive. I've talked to him as well. He's definitely got the fire in his eye. But I used to say that about that girl. And she didn't pan out either. I'm talking about Danica Patrick, but she had that same kind of competitive fire, and I hope that Frankie's not going to go the same way. I never watched Malcolm in the Middle, by the way, so I don't get the big deal, but we'll see. All right, let's talk about Homestead, a place I used to live at. I used to live about a mile from the track until Hurricane Andrew wiped everything out, but gave them an excuse to build the actual racetrack. Before that, Ralph Sanchez had that track, had the Miami Grand Prix, and it started out where they were racing in the city, which was really cool, and I remember those days. And then he had a track at the Dade County Youth Fairgrounds. And why is that significant, you ask? Well, when I was living down there, DK, before kids, my wife and I used to like to go to the Dade County Youth Fair a lot. And I bought a new Camaro one year, went there and parked, and on the way out, we drove across the track, what was going to be the track. They'd already kind of mapped it out. And I saw some traffic cones there. I may or may not. Well, okay, I did. I kind of navigated around the cones, and I got down the front stretch and was doing about 80 miles an hour. When I quickly got to meet one of the Miami-Dade's finest deputies, don't remember his name, but I am grateful for the fact that he didn't actually put me in jail or arrest me. He actually gave me a warning, and we talked about my brand new Camaro, and he said, "Get the hell out of here." So that was my foray on one of Ralph Sanchez's tracks. But yeah, go back to Homestead every year, and like I said, I will be having stone crabs down at Garcia's Fish House, where I jumped in the river many years ago, before you were born, Owen. Back when I was young, probably your age, on a drunken tirade one night, and did jump in the Miami River, lived to tell about it, and my kids are fine, and they were born after that. So anyway, we'll be looking forward to that. Christopher Bell, defending winner, he could win his way into the Final Four yet again. But I think the other story we're looking at this weekend is Kyle Busch, who has just 3 more races to keep his win streak alive. So it'll be interesting to see if he can step up the plate. But I know you're looking at another Kyle.
Well, I'm looking at Kyle Larson, and when you talk about winning and getting into the final race, the Championship 4, Kyle Larson really relied on that win at Homestead last year. He won at Las Vegas the opening round and locked himself in, but then he hit the barrels on pit entry late in the race at Homestead, coming in too fast to the pit road, and took himself out of the race. He's not locked in this year, and he and none of the other round of 8 contenders except Joey Logano can afford a mistake like that, because it will put them in such a big points hole coming into Martinsville. So it's just something to watch. Larson cannot rely on the win this time. My pick, it's going to be William Byron, who won here in 2021. I feel like he has a really good handle on this racetrack. He always seems like he's up front and he's fast at Homestead. And then a driver to watch is AJ Allmendinger. This is his best oval track, and his last 2 starts at Homestead for Colleague, he's finished 3rd and 5th. He didn't race last year. Those were 2021 and 2022. It is by far his best oval track, and he's back in for a part-time start in the 16 this weekend before making the transition next year to full-time Cup racing with Colleague again.
And he won the Xfinity race on oval here at Vegas. So yeah, that's a good pick. When Larson hit the barrels I remember that because I was sitting in the press box and you could feel that. I mean, the window on the press box shook. I remember that, and I just like, holy God, what happened? Because I wasn't looking. I kind of caught the aftermath, so we'll see. But Chase Elliott will come in the bottom of the standings. He's eighth in the standings. He's not going to point his way into the Final Four unless 7 drivers all crash out on the first lap of one of the next 2 races. But so he's at the bottom of the standings, so he knows he has to win, and he knows he has to be aggressive. But again, talking to Chase Elliott earlier today, he says it's about being aggressive, but it's all about balance.
Our point situation is what it is, and we are in a must-win situation for the next 2 weeks. So, how we achieve that, if we're able to go out there and win a race, I would prefer just to go be faster than everyone else and call a good race and execute a good day, and that would be how I'd like to go about it. But there are other ways to win races. You look at how Joey won Vegas. Those guys made a great call on pit road, kind of threw a Hail Mary and gave themselves a shot, but he didn't do anything silly to make that happen. But certainly you can be aggressive in other ways too, and that's another example there too.
He also previewed the Homestead track and how it's different from the other tracks they race on.
Yeah, I enjoy going to Homestead. It's a really unique track, and a place that I think from a driver's standpoint is always a lot of fun. It presents challenges that you don't see on a weekly basis with the progressive banking and both ends of the racetrack driving kind of different. And then, certainly you add the challenge of running up by the wall. It lends a lot of pace, but certainly comes with a big risk. So it, with how fragile the suspension components are on these cars, at least now, you just can't really afford a whole lot of wall contact. So it's, a fine line, but I think it's something that all the drivers enjoy. I enjoy it. It's, just something different, not something that I see every weekend, and a place that we've only been going to once a year now for a little while. So, a lot of places we visit twice, you kind of get into a flow a little bit of seeing it more often, but Homestead only going there once a year. There's just a long time in between races. So always takes a little bit of getting used to again.
And finally, I got a chance to ask if he's looking forward to the off season at the end of these 3 races.
But as you head to Miami in the last 3 races, I mean, obviously you got the pressure of being in the playoffs and you've got all that. But is there a point in the season, because these seasons are so long, is there a point in the season where you start like looking forward to the off season and what you're going to do and just sitting on the couch and doing nothing, or is it just full throttle and then you take a step back and take a breath and then move on?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as long as you still have an opportunity to, race for a championship, for me, that keeps me motivated and really not thinking about what is, going on in the winter or anything like that. So, I think that, I hope that's the case all the way to Phoenix, obviously, but, yeah, I haven't really crossed that bridge personally, and we'll kind of see what happens when we get closer to wintertime. But I don't have anything planned right now. I don't have any trips planned or anything like that. So just all eyes on trying to get through these next 2 weeks successfully, and have a shot to race in Phoenix.
Thanks, pal. Have fun this weekend. See you there.
Thanks.
All right, let's finish up with this. We have a new Cup Series winner. Happened on a weekday, and it happened today on a Wednesday. What did I say? I've been saying Tuesday. God, I'm getting old. It's Wednesday, and something significant happened today that awarded the win to somebody. Talk about that, Owen.
Well, we're not back to midweek races. We're not back to the pandemic yet again, but this one's a 1971 win. Bobby Allison is now the official winner of the 1971 Myers Brothers Memorial Race at Bowman Gray Stadium. Previously the only NASCAR race that didn't have a winner. And that's because Allison actually raced not a Grand National car, what became the Cup Series, but a Grand America car in that race. In some races, NASCAR used to allow those lighter, smaller cars to compete alongside the bigger Grand National entrants. And at that small track, Allison, who had both cars, chose to race the smaller car, and it really worked out to his advantage because he was able to win. NASCAR was not willing to give him the trophy, though, and they finally made that right almost 50 years later. So an interesting detail about the win, it now means that Allison has 85 wins, which moves him from a tied fourth on the all-time wins list to a sole fourth place. The driver who's fallen from fourth to fifth as a result, Darrell Waltrip, who's long maintained that he should have an extra win at North Wilkesboro because of a claimed scoring error when the car picked up the wrong leader in the 1990 iteration of that race. So there's some reviews all over that wins leaderboard.
Yeah, and Bobby Allison was the first driver I ever followed in NASCAR when I was a fan in the early '80s and into the '90s. That's because my dad was born and raised in Alabama, and he was part of he was part of the Alabama gang. Allison was, so that was my driver. I actually had a Bobby Allison hat, a Miller Lite hat, and in Hurricane Andrew, after I was picking through the remains of my house, I had a mental list of stuff I wanted to make sure I got, and I still got that hat. I found it, and I still got that hat. And probably one of the highlights of my NASCAR media career was, I forget, it was late 90s, early 2000s when I was first starting this, and my dad was still alive. He passed in 2009, and he was still alive. I brought him to, when they had qualifying on separate days. So I brought him to qualifying. Brought him into the Charlotte Media Center, and he was sitting at a table. And anybody who's ever been, there's in the media center, there's like a little cafeteria area. So he was sitting down. I was going to go do an interview with someone else. I came back, and lo and behold, there's my dad sitting there with Bobby Allison, talking like they were old friends. And it was probably the highlight of my career. And I didn't say a word. I just walked away and let them have it. Let them have their conversation. So it was really great. I know it was a highlight of my dad's life, and it was really cool to see. So, and Bobby Allison is still going strong. So good for him, and good for having the, beating Waltrip after all these years, which is in a sense what he's done. So, hey, good for him. Hey, listen, gang, we are really, really happy you joined us today. I will be at Homestead this weekend, full of stone crabs. I'll also be at Martinsville, and finally, I'll be at Phoenix. So if you're at one of those races, hit me up on social media. Look for the content on our YouTube channel. Visit cupscene.com. Owen will have a preview out of this weekend, so look for that. We will see you next time. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, look, you guys, if you made it this far, I want to say thank you. Had some tech issues with the microphone, promised to get it fixed by next week, and it'll be all better. If you suffered through all this and having to listen to my voice, which is bad enough anyway, but you had to listen to the microphone, I apologize. I'll fix it next week. Thanks again. Appreciate all the support. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to Speed Talk Live. For questions or just to tell us how bad our production is or to leave other feedback, leave us a comment below. For all the latest NASCAR news, visit www.cupscene.com. Until next time, peace out and let's go racing.
All right, there's the checkered flag. Great job, driver.